Hello, you spectacular people. Welcome to History Goes Bump Redux. I am your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this Redux, we're going back to an episode we did back in 2016. This is the Dumas. Is that how you?
Dumas.
The Dumas Brothel in Montana. Are you ready to go back?
I'm ready.
History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
We covered this historic and famous brothel back on episode 120 in 2016. This is one of the few haunted locations we have found in Montana, and it is located in Butte. The town has its roots in mining and was known as the richest hill on earth. Gold, silver, and copper were all mined here. As was the case with so many mining towels.
Mining towels.
Mining towels.
Is that like, I don't even know what mining towels would be. They'd probably be really sweaty and dirty.
To wipe your sweat and get the soot off your face and stuff. As was the case with so many mining towns, a successful red light district grew within the town. One of the most successful and high-class brothels in town was the Dumas Brothel. Rich clientele could have their fantasies met here. But there was also pleasure for the working class in the basement, which ran like a sex mill. The brothel passed through many hands and has the reputation of being the longest-running brothel in the country. And it seems that clients and the girls are still hanging around here in the afterlife. Several entities are thought to haunt this building. Join us as we explore the history and hauntings of the Dumas Brothel.
The fact that Butte was rich in mining material brought many immigrants to the area from all over the world. There were the Irish, the Italians, Eastern Europeans, and the Chinese. The influence of these immigrants is still represented in Butte today via a bakery specialty enjoyed mainly during the holidays. The povatitsa is a Cornish pastry made from dough, nuts, and vanilla. Well, that sounds pretty good. Almost sounds like a cinnamon roll with nuts on it. Does it have a lot of sugar? That's all I care about. The more sugar, the better. This was something that miners could eat easily while they worked. There's also the Scandinavian lefse that has remained popular in the region as well. Butte separated into immigrant areas with their own gangs featuring the Eastern Europeans of the McQueen Edition, the Irish of the Dublin Gulch, and the Italians of Meterville. Butte also had its own Chinatown.
The Chinese Exclusion Act was passed in 1882, and this halted Chinese migration. This federal law was signed by President Chester A. Arthur and was the most restrictive bill on immigration ever passed in the United States. It prohibited all Chinese immigration into the country and was the first law that prevented a specific ethnic group from entering the United States. This was not repealed until 1943 via the Magnuson Act. Not sure which. There was much anti-Chinese sentiment that began in the 1870s, and it only grew, forcing Chinese business owners to sue the unions, and they won.
Women saw mining towns as wonderful opportunities to make money. Their services were needed in housekeeping and cooking, and of course, there was the sex industry. Pimps and their girls followed the miners to Butte from all corners of the world. Ladies of the evening usually went by generic names such as Jew Jess or Mexican Maria. Okay.
Wow.
Wow. Don't know that you really have that nickname. But okay. And our pimps were referred to as John McGumpus or secretaries. Just check with my secretary if I'm available, I guess.
Looks like John McGimps.
Which was a more refined epithet that was peculiar to Butte. I guess they'd never used that anywhere other than at Butte.
Interesting.
More sensitive to the rights of working people than to those who exploited them, the local police were especially hard on pimps and would often run them out of town when they were identified. A group of women called Ladies of the Line began selling sexual services on Park Street, located in the north part of the city. Tents and shacks lined the street and were used solely for the purposes of prostitution. At some point over the next 20 years, the tents and shacks were replaced with legitimate businesses. The Park Street Girls, as they'd come to be known, moved to the south side of the city.
By 1888, Butte's East Galena Street was lined with brothels. Nearly every building on the street housed prostitution. This area of Galena Street came to be known as the Twilight Zone.
I don't think it has the same meaning as what we think, especially back from the 1880s.
Well,
Can you imagine? I wonder if whoever came up with, which I'm assuming is Rod Serling, did he know the other connotation for Twilight Zone?
I don't know.
I'm assuming it meant, you go over there when it's twilight to,
Bow chicka bow wow.
yeah, whatever, get services. Did we say this is not an episode for children?
Ladies of the evening plied their trade from rooms or spaces called cribs that were equipped with call boxes for ordering drinks or food from nearby bars and noodle parlors.
Wow, so they were like kind of ahead of their time with call boxes.
Evidence of these cribs can be seen in the narrow doorways of the buildings that line the street. The largest of these establishments was the Casino Theater, a mixture of saloon, dance hall, and brothel. The casino employed 100 girls. In the late 19th century, several prominent Montanans owned brothels in Butte. Two of those men were Lee Mantle, who later became a United States Senator, and Anton H. Holter, a wealthy businessman from Helena, Montana.
Why am I not surprised that one of them was a senator?
Well,
French-Canadian brothers Joseph and Arthur Nadeau would eventually acquire the most property in Butte's prostitution areas or red light districts. The brothers built a brothel in 1890 at 45 East Mercury Street and named it for Joseph's wife. Wait a minute.
what?
Why are you naming one of these places after your wife? Okay. Delia Nadeau, whose maiden name was Dumas. Okay. So that's where we get the name from. Wow. Hey, honey, here's what I think of your maiden name.
But it's going to make us a lot of money.
Yeah. By the turn of the century in Butte, more discriminating clients could visit 3 high-class sex houses in Butte. There was the Hotel Victoria, the Windsor Hotel, and the Dumas Brothel, also known as the Dumas Hotel. Winky, winky. I love how they have hotel in all the names. The Dumas
Hotel.
Yeah. We rent the rooms by the hour. The Dumas Brothel is a 2-story brick building facing Mercury Street, built in the Victorian style. There is a raised basement level that backs onto Venus Alley. The upstairs has several large rooms and suites and a large open balcony with skylights. This area was for the people with money who wanted to fulfill their sensual desires with a beautiful, well-dressed, painted lady in a private, comfortable room that included the bells and whistles of the privileged. Politicians and wealthy businessmen enjoyed sex with these stunning young women whom they would hand select. So I could just imagine the madam would have them all come into the front room. We've seen this in movies before.
Right.
And they'd be like, here's all the ladies. Which one would you like? These well-appointed ladies would sit in one of the parlor rooms waiting to be chosen for their next intimate encounter. And I don't think it was just to talk about politics.
I highly doubt it. From 1890 to 1942, the basement area was reserved to meet the sexual desires of the common man. The minor. Dumas Brothel had an ample basement where minors with less money could go enjoy sex with the not-so-pretty and older prostitutes, each of which worked out of a tiny cubicle just big enough for a bed called a crib. There were 43 cribs that were operational around the clock, using 3 shifts of women to cover the demand during the busy weekends and on payday. As the miners were assigned one of the 3 shifts at the mines, it was just good business to be open 24 hours a day.
Eek.
Originally, a stairway led down the stairs from the front sidewalk. There was a door in the basement that opened into the underground tunnels that ran under the city of Butte as well. Through this door, men could enter discreetly and enjoy some sex with women. It is claimed that these tunnels circulated out of other brothels and even to City Hall.
Oh, why am I not surprised?
There was also access from a back door of the Dumas that opened into Pleasant Alley. Pleasant Alley, full of pleasantries,
Yeah.
near South Wyoming Street, which was the busiest section of Butte's red light area.
During its earlier history, two boarders at the Dumas Brothel listed their occupations as gambler and saloon man in census records.
Okay.
I mean, there are people even to this day that's what they do as their profession is gambling. I think they even implemented a new law recently that is supposed to help gamblers with paying their taxes and their losses and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can go play poker and claim that that's my job? And then I could be like, oh, I lost $20,000. Can the government like give me some money back for that?
You're not that good at
refund?
cards, darling.
I know. That's why I need to know. Can I get a refund?
Yeah. No.
So one can see that there were efforts to cover up the true purpose of the hotel. By 1900, the brothel was being run by Madame Grace McGinnis, her servant, a Chinese cook, and 4 ladies of the evening. At that time, the cost of sex in the brothel was 50 cents. The women were only allowed to keep 40% of their earnings. Holy cow. Wait a minute. You don't even get half? But some received high tips from their clients, making the business lucrative for them. This enabled them to dress in fine clothes, making them appear to be just another fine lady about town. One such lady was a French prostitute named Sandra. It is thought that she was probably brought in illegally from Canada by the NATO brothers. She was a petite woman who was incredibly popular with the men because she knew a lot of, how should I put this, techniques that were described as satisfying to her customers.
Okay.
She knew how to finish the job, I guess.
Oh, God.
The authorities eventually caught on that Sandra was here illegally. Before they would raid the Dumas brothel to look for her, police would call ahead so that the politicians could get out. Of
Oh,
course.
man.
Make sure we cover them so they don't get in trouble. Sandra would get the warning as well and took to hiding in a specially made refrigerator. Oh, no. No. You're not supposed to hide in a refrigerator. Of course, the latch on the refrigerator was broken, and so it was thought the door would not open. But the truth was that the inside was fitted with a lock. Sandra would climb into the refrigerator and lock it from the inside. When the police would try to open the door, it would not open, and they would be left to believe that it was just a broken handle. Sandra was never caught, and she made a good living until she retired at the age of 61. So I guess she was okay hiding in the refrigerator because she had the lock on the inside. And holy cow, she turned tricks until she was 61. Whoa.
Holy smokes. Despite the large size of the brothel, Madame McGinnis only had 5 girls and a musician working for her in 1902. During this time, the Dumas and other like businesses in Butte's red light district were unusually lucrative ventures that were frequented by miners from the local Anaconda Copper Mining Company. In 1903, traffic grew to a point where the Dumas operations had to be expanded and more cribs were built in the basement of the house.
Okay, they must have made the basement bigger because I don't know how else you could have gotten any more in there.
Even though the Dumas was operated 24 hours a day with several girls taking 3 shifts, by 1910, there were only 2 women reported to actually be living there. Instead, the ladies of the evening lived in other parts of Pleasant Alley and commuted to the brothel for their shifts. In Butte, the activities of the city's prostitutes were generally restricted to Galen and Mercury Street. From the windows of their street-facing cribs, the girls would attract prospective clients in varying states of undress. The Butte Miner, a local newspaper, explained how the girls did this.
With an abandon that has no trace of modesty in it, these women lean out of their windows and address the vilest kind of language imaginable to people passing on the street, or else boldly make their appearance on the thoroughfare and visit from one crib to another. The Dumas' business and those like it were criticized by a number of people who sought to reform the red light district. Reverend William Beaterwolf condemned Butte as, quote, the lowest sinkhole of vice in the West.
Wow.
And that he saw, quote, enough legitimate vice in Butte to damn the soul of every young man and young woman in it. Wow. He held revival services for residents which attacked rounders, gamblers, and habitues, is that how you would say that? Of the red light district.
Yeah.
Frequenters, apparently, of the red light district. The opposite opinion was held by the local businesses as they benefited and even came to depend on the support of the sex workers at the Dumas and other places of business like it. The prostitutes would buy their dresses at local clothiers, frequent the city's dry cleaners, and would patronize Chinese herbalists, looking for, birth control potions and venereal disease remedies.
Ugh.
$5 fines were paid to the city government and police to make sure that their operations were unhampered with. Instead of closing and relocating the red light district, the mayor and police of Butte ordered that the women wear longer skirts and high-necked blouses and that they, quote, refrain from indecent exposures. Put some clothes on, ladies. After their ordinances were put in place, the Butte Miner reported that nothing was seen in the district except long dresses and long faces.
Probably on the men.
I'm sure the men are like, dang it. What the women say about the matter is not fit for publication.
Oh my.
They weren't happy about it either, Kelly, because it makes it harder to ply your wares if you can't show them what you got.
I'm sure.
By 1910, the people were petitioning Mayor Charles Nevin to shut down the district. With the district contributing $2,000 to the city's coffers every month, the efforts eventually died because money talks. They're like, no way are we getting rid of that.
In 1913, the brothel was expanded again. A one-story structure was added to the building, increasing the number of cribs by 8. 4 of the added cribs opened directly onto Pleasant Alley, by that time known as Venus Alley.
I feel like it should be called Pleasure Alley.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you going to sing Venus for us?
No.
Did you know?
Nope, not going to happen. When copper prices went up,
Okay.
the more than 14,000 miners in the city experienced a pay raise of 25 cents and injected an additional $6,000 into Butte's economy. During this time, the Dumas experienced an upswing in patronage, but of course it did.
Uh-huh.
In 1916, as a result of the added clientele, the brothel added 5 partitions and a staircase, and the ground floor, once a grand parlor, was partitioned into cribs.
So basically every square inch of this place that we can do it with, it's all going to be working space.
They were doing it all right. With the onset of World War I and Prohibition, local lawmakers began to crack down on Butte's red light district, and by 1917, the district was effectively closed. Signs saying men under 21 keep out were commonplace, and in the next census, prostitution had completely disappeared as a declared profession in Butte. Undeterred, the Dumas brothers remained in See, I kept wanting to say brothers.
I know. I mean, it was created by a couple of brothers.
Dumas brothers instead of brothel. Undeterred, the Dumas brothel remained in operation.
Anne Valet began overseeing the Dumas for the Nadeau family in 1925, and by the 1930s, operations had passed to Madame Rose Davis. In 1940, Lillian Walden and her husband Dick began running the brothel. Under the new management, the price of sex at the brothel was raised to $2. Wow. It went from, what was it, 5 cents before? 25 cents before?
50 cents.
50 cents to $2. In 1942, the federal government ordered all open brothels in the United States to shut down. This was done to protect their war effort. How is that protecting your war effort?
I don't know.
We don't want them like leaving the bases and...
Oh, read the next sentence.
Oh, they said it was to prevent the spread of venereal diseases among soldiers in World War II.
I mean, that makes sense.
But is it that bad that we're shutting down all the brothels because all the soldiers are getting venereal diseases?
I mean, it can spread like wildfire.
Fire. The boom from the Butte vice industry was curtailed sharply at many of the once open brothel establishments. The underground passages were closed, and all that remained of the popular Venus Alley were the red bricks of the original alley. Besides having to knock down the cheap addition in the back of the Dumas Brothel, the cribs in the basement were sealed as well, with everything left behind by the women. Much of it is still there to this day, creating a time capsule. However, the first and second floors and rooms were still discreetly open for business, and the action simply moved upstairs, becoming more hidden from prying eyes, making it hard for the law to prosecute them. That is, if they even wanted to, which I'm sure they were partaking, so they probably didn't want to. The window shopping was abandoned completely, much to the disappointment of the clients. Clients of the brothel, now called the Dumas Hotel, would come to the front door, and after being studied through a door hole, they would be led inside to a parlor where a few available women would be seated, waiting to be chosen. In addition, doorbells were added, and a code system was employed for use in dealing with troublesome guests. Or maybe if you knew somebody was a cop and you're like, "Nyeh, nyeh." In 1950, when Lillian Walden retired, the price for a woman at the brothel was $5. Now we've more than doubled it. Next,
Inflation.
yeah, okay, you're
Hello?
right. What am I thinking? It's the 50s after all. Next, Eleanor Knott took over running of the Dumas, and her last name is like Knott's Berry Farm.
It is.
I wonder if she was related to the Knotts family.
Oh, good grief.
The Nadeau family ceased being owners around this time as well. Knott only managed the Dumas for a short time, as she committed suicide in 1955 after her lover died of a heart attack. On February 8th, 1955, Eleanor Knott had made a decision to change her life. She had decided to run away with her lover and start a new life. Her lover was a married Butte businessman. Eleanor waited patiently with suitcase in hand, but her lover never showed. In the morning, Eleanor was found in room number 20 of the Dumas, dead of an overdose of sleeping pills and alcohol. Eleanor's life had been very financially rewarding, and she possessed a number of worldly goods, including a nearly new red Cadillac convertible,
Wow.
gold and diamond jewelry, cash, and a new Harley Davidson that she had just bought. The motorcycle, she told friends, was purchased to put some fun into her life. After her death, none of these things were ever found or reported through the estate. So I don't know where they all went. I'm sure everybody helped themselves to her stuff, apparently. Bonita Farron was the next madam to take over the reins of the Dumas in 1955, and she stayed in charge until her death in 1969. In the late 1960s, several local police officers took the initiative to close the remaining 3 operating high-class sex houses: Hotel Victoria, Windsor Hotel, and the Dumas. The Dumas did not remain closed for long, and Madame Farron had it back up and running. In 1970, the Dumas was listed in the National Register of Historic Places as a Victorian brothel and an active house of prostitution. I don't think we've ever heard that before.
No.
We're like, hey, it's got a lot of great history connected to it, and we want to protect it. Let's put it on the registry, and we're not going to lie about what it is.
Okay.
In 1971, Ruby Garrett, a local resident of Butte for some 30 years, purchased the Dumas. Garrett would pay local police officers and officials $200 to $300 a month in return for their silence about the Dumas's activities. Under Garrett, the cost of a prostitute was $20, so now we've really rocketed up. In 1981, Madame Garrett was charged with tax evasion. That's how they always get them, whether
Right.
it's Al Capone or whatever. It's that tax evasion gets you every time. Pay your taxes, even if you're a criminal. Madame Garrett was convicted of federal tax evasion and served 6 months in prison in 1982. The brothel was closed soon after, but not before a robbery took place there. On March 17th, 2012, Ruby Garrett died at the age of 94 at Crest Nursing Home in Butte. She was remembered as a kind woman in her later years who looked out for her working girls. Garrett had served 9 months of a 4-year sentence for manslaughter in 1960. A victim of spousal abuse and so badly beaten that she was unrecognizable,
Wow.
Garrett walked into a card game her husband was participating in and shot him 5 times, killing him. She was charged with first-degree murder, but the jury felt manslaughter was the strongest charge that they could and would impose. So they took pity on her, and she only had to serve 9 months of it. So
Wow.
that's amazing. When the Dumas closed, it was the longest operating brothel in the United States, having operated for Kelly 92 years.
That's insane.
That
That's
is
so
an
crazy.
amazing record.
Wow.
And this was long after prostitution, of course, was outlawed. Unable to pay taxes on the Dumas, it was sold by Garrett in 1989 to an antiques dealer named Rudy Geisek, I guess is how you'd say that name, on the condition that it was preserved in its original state. Now, I like it when people make deals like this because I don't know how you would ever hold that person to doing that. But Geisek said, you know what? I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain. He turned the brothel into a museum and operated it as such for most of the 1990s. Due to financial difficulties, Geisek attempted to sell the building in 1998. The International Sex Worker Foundation for Art, Culture, and Education responded. Who knew that they had their own group?
I had
So
no
from
idea.
here on out, we're going to call it the ISWFACE. Or can I say that?
ISW face?
Iswaface. I don't know.
Mm.
So the ISWFACE sought to reopen the Dumas as not only a museum, but also a gallery and convention center.
It just gets more and more odd.
Okay. Ellen Baumler of the National Register of Historic Places wrote in support for the rescue of the Dumas that, quote, it is not only significant as the last standing parlor house in this area of Butte, but also because of its length of operation as a rare, intact commentary on social history. Many people were against the restoration of the Dumas, including former prostitutes in Butte, but operation proceeded. Then in September 2000, Geisek claimed the ISWFACE owed him $52,000 in wages for work performed at the Dumas. Geisek sued and was granted the wages he petitioned for and additional penalties. The business deal with ISWFACE was terminated, however. In the years that followed, the Dumas was put up for auction twice, as Geisek did not have the money to maintain the building.
Very interesting. In May of 2005, Rudy Geisek closed the Dumas Brothel permanently. He was concerned that a collapsing back wall made it unsafe for tourists to walk through the cribs and access a second floor of bedrooms. Geisek had attempted to sell the Dumas, even using eBay as a way to dump the building.
I didn't know you could sell a building on eBay. I knew you could sell a lot of stuff, but a building?
Apparently.
Huh.
But back taxes and liens made it impossible to sell. Former Surgeon General Jocelyn Elders took on a fundraising campaign to help the Dumas Brothel.
The Surgeon General?
I mean,
Okay.
I was saying it's getting stranger and stranger. Elders worked with the ISWFACE and attended a fundraiser in Butte. And she shared, stop smiling. Stop it. I'm sweating so bad. I'm having the worst hot flash right now. God. Don't smack me. And she shared her controversial side while staying there. No.
You can get it, Kelly. I know you can.
And she shared her controversial side while there, saying, I always tell young people the best. You're not leaving all that in, are you?
Some
I
of
dropped an
it. Some
F-bomb
of it
and
I
stuff.
will.
I always tell young people the vows of abstinence break more easily than a latex condom.
Okay.
Elders spoke about prostitution and many of the reasons women get involved in it, including poverty and the fact that several are forced to work in the sex industry. The negatives were discussed as well, from disease to women being beaten by pimps. One woman disagreed and said, I chose to be a prostitute because everyone is good at something, and I know what I'm good at.
Hey, if you're good at it,
Maybe she was like the petite Canadian gal.
that could be.
ISWFACE wanted to restore the defunct Dumas Brothel in Butte as its international headquarters and as a museum. It is trying to promote healthcare and workplace rights for those in the sex trade, as well as legalization of prostitution. Elders encourage the prostitutes to keep up their crusade and not shy away from controversy. It's controversy that gets the press, she advised. You know, I know that. In 2008, the Dumas reopened for tours.
I'm not sure how he says his last name. It's Piche, Michael
Piche?
Piche, I guess. And Travis Eskelson of Butte bought the brothel in 2012 with plans of improving the beleaguered building in the middle of Butte's former red light district. In December 2013, the Urban Revitalization Agency considered a $92,000 loan request for repairs and shoring up outstanding debt for the historic Dumas brothel. Even though it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places and operated as a museum, it had slipped even further into disrepair and had significant structural problems. The brothel changed hands again since the original episode we did, because that's where we ended it for the ownership on that. The current owners are David and Charlie Prince, and the place is open for tours and paranormal investigations. I don't know when they bought it, and I don't know what they've done to renovate it, but clearly they must have made it somewhat safe if they've got people hanging out in it.
Sure. Yeah.
Brothels seem to attract ghosts in the same way that theaters do, Kelly. And I think it's probably for similar reasons. You've got strong emotions that have passed through the brothels. There's fear and joy, probably for some people. And, I can imagine the women who worked down the cribs in what basically you describe as a sex mill had to have been awful. No matter how well these ladies were treated, the life of a sex worker could not possibly have been a happy one. It was very dangerous to the women's health. They had unwanted pregnancies, complications of an opium induced abortion, venereal disease, or even being murdered by a jealous client or boyfriend. And of course, we know entities that die unexpectedly on the job sometimes continue in their profession after death. Eleanor Knott did not leave the brothel after she committed suicide. Working girls of the Dumas reported seeing the ghost of Eleanor with a suitcase in her hand walking the halls. One of the first sightings of this came in the 1970s when an employee was alone in the building one evening and saw a woman carrying a suitcase walk past the door of the upstairs bathroom and descend the stairs. This employee ran out to see who was there because no one else should have been in the house, and there was no one anywhere, and no one would have been able to make an exit in such a short period of time. Many believe Eleanor is still searching for her lover. Her full-bodied apparition has been seen by visitors to the Dumas as well. Dramatic photos have been taken of her apparition all throughout the building. She also seems to be a strong protective spirit of the building who encourages and leads the others as well. So it's almost like, you know how you have that one ghost that's in a location that seems to be in charge? They
Right.
think Eleanor is that spirit.
Mm. The women who worked on the upper floors enjoyed a higher class of clientele. The women who worked in the basement may have ran into a few men with anger management issues. Yeah. The remains of a blood-stained handprint can still be seen on an inner wall of a crib room. That also has a badly damaged door jamb.
Wow.
Yeah.
That blows my mind when you have that blood stain that you can never get rid of.
Yeah. This was discovered when the basement crib rooms were unsealed by Rudy Geisick. It is extremely possible that a sex worker was killed in her crib where she worked. Other sex workers simply overdosed or committed suicide. In 1917, a young prostitute named Sarah worked at the Dumas Brothel. She had a client named James that she had every intention of marrying. James sent her a love letter, and she displayed it in her crib. James was killed in a mine explosion the day after she received the letter. Sarah either accidentally overdosed or deliberately killed herself using an opium-based drug used by the women to medicate themselves or cause abortions.
After the 2013 renovations began, the Dumas was overrun with paranormal activity. Noisy activity was unmistakable coming from the basement area, perhaps sounds that would have been heard in a brothel. So I won't describe those for you. Sarah became very active as these massive renovations got underway. Possibly Sarah and the other spirits were upset with all the new people and renovation workers in their house, messing with the cribs and their leftover personal artifacts. Because as we said, a lot of stuff was left behind.
Right.
Paranormal investigators believe that something in her belongings that had once been sealed had now been opened, causing her to be more restless than the others. The new owners, Travis and Michael, were scared to death by the paranormal activity. They asked an investigation team from Haunted Collector to come in and see what was causing the spirit's unhappiness and perhaps uncover what this entity wanted.
Haunted Collector aired their episode on March 20th, 2013, and they reported their findings. They found some hard evidence that pointed to a prostitute, Sarah, as the most restless spirit by catching her on a couple of EVPs in her crib room. When investigators picked up a letter from her minor boyfriend, James, that was still on display, the bed shook, and this was caught on camera.
I can't believe they still have the letter.
Right. The team brought out a bottle of opium medicine they think Sarah took that killed her. The activity increased until they removed it from the building. This medication was never brought back inside the brothel, and Sarah seems to have moved into a state of peace.
Male entities of minors seem to like to relive their special recreation time with their favorite lady in the basement as well. Smoky mists have been seen and disembodied voices have been heard in the first floor areas. During a tour, a latch door unlatched itself in front of a group of witnesses.
Wow.
The strong scent, a nose picture, Kelly, of cigar smoke comes and goes most often on the first floor. And that makes sense because you would have had, the men of the higher caliber would have been there.
Right.
The entity of Sandra, a French prostitute, has tenderly touched people and held their hands. An EVP was caught in the madam's room by the haunted collector group as well. One male entity has been caught on a photo by an investigator. He was wearing a minor outfit, including a bandana. A male and female entity were caught on camera near the basement door that led to the tunnels that ran through the red light district. The male is standing on the right, looking down at the female, who seems to be wearing a large hat, or she has a lot of hair. They weren't able to, it's not real clear.
Differentiate. Yeah. When Rudy Geisick owned the building, 3 teens broke into the Dumas Brothel. They grabbed some stuff from the antique photo shop in one of the first floor parlors. When they started up the staircase to the second floor, they were stopped in their tracks by an avalanche of flying china dishes.
Wow.
The frightened thieves did an about face and made a hasty retreat out the back door.
I bet they did.
No one knows what caused those dishes to fly at the young men.
And I
I have
wonder,
an idea.
I have an idea too. I wonder if they all got busted. The dishes flying around.
I would imagine so, unfortunately.
Wow. And you can imagine that the ladies were like, "Get out of our house, you thieves, taking our
Hoodlums.
stuff." Yeah. Do the spirits of former ladies of the evening still turn their tricks at the brothel in the afterlife? Are spirit miners still looking for a good time at this location? Is the Dumas Brothel haunted? That is for you to decide. Oh, pretty cool place to check out in Montana. It's not a real fancy looking building. But it's Victorian, and we love our Victorian stuff.
Yes, we do.
And they do a lot of investigations there. So it'd be an interesting place to get inside and see if you can talk to one of the ladies and see what they're thinking, what's on their mind, and all that stuff.
Maybe during the warmer months. We'll take the camper.
Definitely not going there in the winter. No. Want to thank you guys for joining us on this Redux. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.